Welcome to Wise Women Build, a faith-filled podcast for Christian women who are ready to level up in life, reach their self-actualized potential, and be empowered to make wise decisions, helping them to fulfill their ability to build their lives wisely. For women who know they are meant for more and are ready not to accept less than God's best. I'm your host, Kina Kraus. If you're ready for radical change, to be encouraged and inspired, and meet other extraordinary faith-filled women on the same mission, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Thank you for joining me on the second episode of Wise Women Build podcast. Today's topic is about women and PTSD. And today I have a very special guest who I'm going to introduce here shortly. She's not just a special guest, she's phenomenal, and she's an amazing woman who has endured so much. Her name is Ida Barnette, and she lost her son to gun violence February 4th of 2016. Which was a very traumatic event, not just for her, but for me and other people in her family and in the community. And also, at the same time, she has been on the road to recovery from PTSD, as well as grieving the loss of her son. And so I'm very grateful to have her on the show today because I really would really like for her to share her experience on her journey to recovery and to just really share the experience of, what happened with the loss of her son and how she has been, moving through that situation since then. But I want to explain what PTSD is because I feel that there's a lot of women, not just in the communities that we live in, but all over the world that may be suffering from this condition silently. And they may not have reached out or sought treatment about this condition yet. But PTSD is known as post-traumatic stress disorder. And this disorder, it's an anxiety disorder. And I'm going to explain how I understand it because there's so many different definitions out there that can really explain it in different ways, but I want to explain it in a way that I know it. So post-traumatic stress disorder, as I was explaining, it's an anxiety disorder that's developed when a person experiences trauma. And trauma can be anything from sexual abuse. It can come from psychological abuse. It can come from a childhood molestation event. It can come through domestic violence. It can come through the loss of a loved one violently. It can come through a major medical event. You can even go through a divorce, even legal matters or, a custody issue. And so these type of events, these are considered events, life-changing events that could be very traumatic for people. And so with PTSD, it's a condition that is a condition that affects you mentally. And not just mentally, I want to say it can affect you physiologically, it can affect you, physically in your body, and it affects all aspects of your life because one day can be different than the other. And some of the symptoms that you experience, it can be anywhere from, feeling very irritable. You can feel very uneasy. You can deal with flashbacks, nightmares, feeling horror about the situation. You can have moments of despair, actually long moments of despair where, you feel hopeless, your emotions are out of control. And, one of the areas that I find that it can impact is, it can impact your self-worth. And so you just kind of feel like you're just kind of drowning in your emotions and you're drowning in your thoughts. And one of the things that PTSD does is it changes the way that you think, as well as it affects your emotions and your mood. And when people carry this kind of condition, a person can go through a traumatic event, and some people can recover. Let's just say it may take them 3 months to get past a traumatic event, while other people may recover a little bit slower. And sometimes it can take, extended months, even up to many years, even a lifetime, for people to go on this healing journey of recovery. And so it's a real issue out there. And I want to bring awareness to women out there because, I feel that many women are struggling with this, as I said before. And it's a fact that's known that 5 out of every 10 women, they are diagnosed with this condition or they're identified with this condition. And so that says a lot. It says that, maybe our mothers are impacted, maybe our sisters are impacted, our aunts, our nieces, our cousins, anyone can be, impacted by this condition. It doesn't necessarily need to be a woman, but we're walking around with this. And I feel that if we don't seek the proper treatment for this kind of condition, that it's going to be hard for us to move forward in life. And I failed to mention also that PTSD can be developed from combat at war, because there's a lot of women that, have been in military service that have been impacted by this condition by seeing horrific images at war or having maybe a fellow soldier impacted by something like this. And so, in this kind of condition, I feel that we don't need to walk around with it alone, and that we need to know that there is support out there, that there are people that are actually equipped and willing to help us with these kind of conditions. And so one of the reasons why I really brought up this topic was because I have personally been affected by PTSD, and I didn't know I was walking around with it. And it came through a psychological event that, caused a severe mental injury to me, and I didn't realize that. And so I was walking around with this condition that was undiagnosed. And, some of the symptoms that I mentioned earlier, I was, having a hard time just keeping my emotions in check. I was feeling irritable and angry when I started thinking about different memories of the events that happened. I began to just feel like I was numb some of the time. That's one of the things that I wanted to mention, is that you can feel numb about an issue because of the severe trauma that happens. And so I had a really hard time connecting to joyful moments or even joyful events. And I couldn't even understand why it was that way. And, also I had a lot of moments of despair because I was really thinking about what happened. And for legal reasons, I can't explain, the whole issue of what happened. But, I want to share just enough so that you understand that there are people walking around with this condition. But it impaired my day-to-day life. It was hard for me to get out of the bed some days. It was hard for me to be very functional. And it was hard for me to show up and do the things that I needed to do. And one day, I finally said, you know what, something is off here, because I'm not how I'm used to feeling. And a lot of things have changed in me. And I said, you know what, I need to go and get help. And the kind of person I am, I'm not one to share a lot of my personal business. And, if you know anything about PTSD, you get to a place where you're very distrusting. And so there weren't a lot of people that I felt that I could trust or turn to that I could, share my information with and have them hold it in confidence. So anyhow, there was one person that I did reach out to. And the person that I reached out to, I reached out to her and I asked her, I said, do you have a contact that I can have for therapy? And I knew she was a very resourceful person that I could trust. And she gave me the contact. And from there, the very next day, I called. And that began my journey of almost 2.5 years of going through therapy to get to the point where I am now, that I've been in this healing journey of understanding that, emotions can be severely impacted, and that, if we don't take the proper steps to put in the care that we need to be healed, or to go on this journey of healing, to experience wellness, and to just not remain and exist in the condition that we are in, we need to hold ourselves accountable and move forward and do the things that we need to get the help. And so, in my therapy, I was able to get the tools and information that has really helped me to get to the point today where I'm able to get back to having a normal life, where things aren't to where I'm having flashbacks all the time. I'm thinking about bad memories and I'm in this continual state of turmoil. And so, I wanted to share this with you because I feel that therapy is very important. And I think that we all should be aware that, our mental health is very important and that self-care is important. But I want to transition from this point here because I've shared enough about me a little bit here, and I want to introduce my guests. So Ida Spurlin, as I mentioned, she is not just a special guest. She's very amazing to me. And I met her through her son, Steven Spurlin, over, I would say about 10 years ago. Is that right, Ida?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
And Steven was my neighbor. And I was able to connect with him because one day I had introduced myself as his neighbor, and he was very polite, very friendly. He introduced himself too, and we got to know each other at that time. I also, shared my faith with him, and he had faith as well. And that's when I came to know about his mother, Ida Spurlin, who's on the call today or on the podcast today. And, from there, I got to learn that she is not just a great mother, because she is, and she raised a wonderful son, but also that she is a businesswoman. She's very creative. She's an artist, and that she's an author. And most certainly she's done some great things in her life. And she really impacted her son in a great way because he always talked about her with pride and joy. That's what I always knew about Steven. But I want to introduce her. So, Ida, welcome to the show today.
Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And I was trying to sit here and listen, but when you started describing Steven, of course, you come to tears.
Right.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It really means a lot to me. Steven was murdered. He was shot in Las Vegas on February 4th, 2016. It's really important for me to be here today and speak to you about PTSD. The trauma of the event really threw me and my whole family for a loop, mostly, because I am his mother. It just, it stopped my world. It definitely stopped my world. Turned me into a totally different person, or made me try to figure out who I actually was. When Steven was murdered, it was like the rose-colored glasses came off of my eyes. I always tell people that. It's so important for us to share these stories. And this one is the journey has been rough, but I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So when he was murdered and I felt like the rose-colored glasses came off my eyes, I didn't know who I was anymore. I was a totally different person. Now, I was, prior to his murder, I was self-sufficient. Again, I had my own business. I also worked in the medical field for over 30 years, raised 2 children. I was married. When that happened, all of that came to a stop. It came to a halt. I don't know. I try to stay on the positive in today, but at that time, everything just came to a halt. I didn't know how I was. I always say it seemed like I had a stroke, and I did not have a stroke, but it felt like a stroke because I had to learn how to walk again, how to talk again, how to think again, how to breathe. Number one, how to breathe again. I couldn't even do a simple task as far as driving myself to the bank to put my card in to get money out. So if you think about a stroke victim and you think of the work that they have to do if they get back on their feet, it's been very, it's been a struggle. I've learned quite a bit. My first 2 years after my son was murdered, PTSD, when it hits you, it does, and I was listening to your description, and I've always shot straight from the hip. My world was shattered. PTSD shatters your world. When that trauma hits you, it shatters your world. You never know when it's going to come up. It kind of takes its own place in your mind, in your body, in your heart, in your breathing. It takes over everything. Some of the symptoms that I felt, I couldn't sleep. Most of the time I couldn't sleep. I always had to take melatonin, just even from day one to sleep. Even today I do. I take melatonin. No sleep, rapid heartbeat, breathing. It just depends on the time and the hour, and it really, there's no rhyme nor reason, and each individual is totally different. Some of the things that I used for myself as far as getting through this, I think the first 2 years, just what kept me alive was really painting and using art and breathing techniques really helped keep me alive. I usually try to say that I was holding on to a string, holding on to God from a string, but that's not true because I couldn't hold on to anything. I think that God was holding on to me by a string because I couldn't function for 2 years. So it had a grasp, and a lot of times women do not share those things with each other. And I had never been the type of person who stayed in the house. So for the first 6 months, I couldn't work. When I did go back to work, it was so chaotic for me and so overwhelming, I could not stay in my medical job. So I went and got a little part-time job, and even with that, I would go to work and come directly home, and all I could do was make it to work each day. So it was very, totally not who I am, who I've been in the past. So when PTSD hits you, it definitely hits you, and again, there's no rhyme, no reason.
Right. And I remember when Steven had passed, I remember you letting me know about it, and my stomach just dropped because it just was really unexpected. And I remember that at the very beginning, when you had first passed away, I knew that you were expressing that you had a lot of questions, why it happened, and you were really actively trying to seek out justice for Steven. Mm-hmm. What was that like in the very beginning, and how is it now?
That was like just spinning, like I was a hamster on a spinning wheel trying to get somewhere, and I was never going to get anywhere. And I think that was the turning point in my healing, is realizing I'm not going to get the answers. We are not going to have the answers in this world. There's things that happen. We don't know why they happen. I can only trust that God knows my way, knows the way. But I really came to a turning point when I realized I'm not going to get justice in this world. And a lot of survivors, victim survivors of the trauma of gun violence, they look to the law enforcement, for answers. And I don't know that we always get them. Again, I came to a real turning point when I realized I'm not going to get any closure in this world, but I'm okay with it because I don't have to have the answers of everything.
I see. And so what advice would you have for our listeners, that are currently maybe dealing with PTSD and, just helping everyone to know the steps that we can take in our healing and journey process?
I know for myself, I had to keep moving. Just keep breathing and keep moving. I was fortunate enough to be able to use my creating, my art, to continue healing. And at one point early on, that was really the only thing that kept me going. I created and created and created. So whatever you need to do, whatever the strength that you need to find, it has to come from inside of yourself. But you cannot isolate yourself. Reach out to your local mental health offices. See if there are support groups. Get counseling. And sometimes people, counseling is different for everyone. Talk therapy is good for some people, but for me, I feel that creating and art and movement and breathing and meditation and praying has been so good for me because it's just kept me going. So everyone has a different way. Everyone has a different journey. Whatever you need, find out what your need is. Think about what your need is. I know a lot of times it's hard to do. I guess a part of what helped me find out what I needed is every day I woke up and I had to ask myself to keep going. I had to ask myself, Ida, what is your purpose today? Ida, what is your purpose in this world? And I had to ask myself that every single day for 4 or 5 years so I could move forward. And that is the most important thing, to move forward. But definitely you want to contact your local mental health offices, facilities, just for any groups that you can, attend or get some therapy. Also, maybe your local churches who can help support you.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I feel like that's really helpful information. And, I was just thinking when you were explaining all this stuff that you said that, initially when everything happened that you felt that you lost yourself. Like you really didn't know who you were at the time. And so, do you feel that, at this point that you have been reinventing yourself or have been on this reinventing wheel of life? Like, just the way you think about life is so much differently. In that, do you think it's a better way of thinking, or how can you explain that evolution process that you've been going through?
I think now in my life, I'm a totally different person. The truth is always what I keep at the forefront. I'm nothing like I used to be. I'm very direct in what I need and what I want in life and what I expect. I try to teach other people that also. I think it's really important to share how we have gotten through, because a lot of people think that to get out of the PTSD or to get away from the trauma, you've got to go around it, or you can go around it, and you can't. To get away from it, to get through it, you have to go through the pain. I'm a totally different person than I was before my son was killed. I can't explain. I feel that I'm stronger. I've made a lot of better decisions for myself. And I'm going to continue to heal and learn who I am. I'll never stop learning, what my purpose is or who I am in this world. I think my greatest joy comes from giving to other people and to help them learn how to get through these things.
That's great. And you know what? Tell our listeners about what you're currently doing today, because I know that you have an organization that you started a while ago. And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely, it brings me great joy. I actually I've done a lot of the work since Steven was killed. I've always facilitated art classes for kids and women and families. My focus now is on children, women, and families who have suffered the loss through a great trauma like that. So I have started a nonprofit. I believe I started the process in 2021. I started the process of a nonprofit. It is called IEBICU Steven Art Foundation. It is in remembrance of my son. He was an artist also. and it does stand for "In everything beautiful, I see you." And it's so important for me to focus on that because everything in life now that I see that's beautiful, it reminds me of him. So my focus is to facilitate art classes, art projects for just people who have suffered trauma. My focus is on children, women and children, and then on to the families to help them get through the process.
I think that's beautiful. And I know that Steven, he's so proud of you today. And I know that, if he could be here in the present with us, that he would say, "Mom, I'm proud of you." And I want you to know that. And, can you let our listeners know how they can find your information, where they can follow you and purchase some of your products, or even just be a part of what you're doing?
Sure, absolutely. My website is IEBICU, StephenArtFoundation.org. You can find me there, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram under ISKL Designs. And just, contact me either three of those places, and we can just connect, and if there's anything you need, I can try to help you out with it. Just one other thing I'd like to touch base on. My daughter and her husband and my granddaughters have really supported me in everything that I've done, and I just thank God that we have all come together and have been able to heal and continue the healing process together.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, because I know that they have all been a part of the journey with you, and they have been impacted as well. And I think it's a beautiful thing when family can come together and grow together, in spite of a traumatic event, and support one another. And I know I just have to add, when Steven was alive, I remember, when we would go in passing a lot of the days and we would greet each other, he was always very respectful. He'd say, "You good?" I'd say, "Yeah, I'm good." "You good?" We go back and forth with that. But, but when I would see him, he was always faithful to, spend time with his daughter. And I watched how he interacted with her, how gentle he was and how much time he spent with her. And I knew that he really loved his daughter. And I know a lot of his gentle nature had to come from you. So just want to say, Mom, well done. In spite of, what has happened, I know that Steven's spirit is with us here today, and that you've done a great job. And like I said, I know he's, looking down saying, "Mom, I'm proud of you." And I just want you to know that again. So
thank you so much. You have me smiling from ear to ear.
And, do you have any final advice for our listeners today that are tuning in and listening?
One thing that I have to say is that a lot of people, when someone has gone through trauma and PTSD, a lot of people, I won't say turn away, but I think a lot of people turn a blind eye to anyone in need who has gone through something like that. All they need is for you to listen. They don't need you to do anything. They don't need you to say anything. I think at my worst moments, all I needed was someone just to sit there in the same house with me, just sit there with me and be with me while I had the feelings that I had. So just reach out to people in need and just try to be a part of their healing. Like I said, even if you just go over and wash their dishes or, make them a plate of food or something like that, they don't need a lot, so don't be afraid to reach out to people in need. Just be there for them. It's so important. It makes a difference in the healing process because a lot of people do not make it out of it.
You know what? I really love that you said that, because it's powerful to me and it speaks volumes. Because you're right. When you're going through something like that, you don't always have to have the solution at the time, but it can mean so much for someone just to sit there and be there with you, just having their presence there. I just really feel that it translates to a language of love. And even, like you said, washing dishes or even cooking a meal or bringing a meal over or just saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" It doesn't have to be a lot, but those moments, I believe they actually, they add to our healing.
Yes, Absolutely.
So I love that.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to, people when they're in the thick of it, they can't take their mind off of the trauma or the PTSD. And just to get them outside of their mind and maybe moving around and take a walk, or, let's draw a picture, let's, walk through the sand, let's go to the beach, just to get them outside of their head and moving and breathing. I think the most important thing for my healing has been to move the trauma outside of my body, and I do that by the movement, the breathing, the meditation, the praying, the creating, the painting. So just anything that will move that trauma outside of your body, it has to come out. One way or the other, it has to come out. So you might as well choose, how you want to do that. Very important.
Yes. And I loved how you said, getting out, getting movement and getting that trauma out of your body, because one thing that I've learned in this journey is that trauma is just not a mental thing, and it's not just a physiological thing. It can be a physical thing too. So, your healing comes from all places. And, I think that that's important, that we understand that trauma can be held in your body. And so, a part of you healing and getting away from maybe certain ailments or just suffering is actually doing those things that are going to help you in your journey of healing. It's a holistic process, I believe.
Absolutely, I agree.
Well, thank you for sharing. And, I just want to say one last thing to my listeners right now, that if you are a woman and you feel that you have gone through a traumatic event, just to seek out help. I feel that this is something that you should not hold silently. But I understand that sometimes it could be hard to trust someone. But if you can find someone that you can trust, that you can talk to, I believe that that would be the beginning of your healing journey. And, even sometimes in faith, sometimes, people feel that you can pray things away, that you can leave some things at the altar, or even you can fast some things away. But sometimes there's some injuries that are so deep that it takes more than that. And I believe God is so bigger than that. He's so much more expansive than that. And sometimes he sends angels to us here on earth that are in the form of people who have skills and education and experience that are compassionate enough to help heal us on our journey. And, just like the man who was beaten up and left on the side of the road, when we look at that parable in the Bible, we see that this man that was left there on the side of the road, that there were 3 different people that could have helped that man. 2 of them were religious. They went along their business. They went along their way. But there was one who was just a good Samaritan. He wasn't even considered to be in the household of faith or considered to be of that nature. But, when we look at that story, this was a man who had a compassionate enough heart that he could actually reach out to an individual who was hurting and injured and help them in their process. And so sometimes, going outside of the church, and I'm going to say this, sometimes going outside of the church and seeking professional and skilled help sometimes can really help you in your journey. And you'll see that sometimes God can place someone on your path to help you with that, like he did for me. And one last thing I want to say is, if you are holding on to some kind of emotional pain and you kind of feel like something is off, number one, we got to be honest with ourselves. We got to be aware that there are things out there that can happen that can be beyond your control and that you can be affected by it. And it doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that, something is totally wrong with you. It could mean that you just need help getting through the situation that you're going through in this journey of life so that you can get on the right path and get on your journey of healing and wholeness. And, after you become aware of what's possibly out there or happening to you, the second thing is to acknowledge it if you can, to say, what, this very thing possibly may be happening. Let me go ahead and get some help here. And I don't feel that there's anything wrong with that. Whether you go to pastoral counseling, whether you reach out to a friend, whether you go seek professional help, it's about acknowledging and taking those steps. And then once you get on that journey where you do get the help, it may be a painful experience that you may have to go through. But one thing that I understand is that when you get through it, because you have to go through it, you can't get around it, like Ida said. It's one of those things that it's a journey for you. But, one thing that I do realize is that once you go through it and you accept it, that you do grow and you do come out a lot stronger. And, by you going through that journey of getting help, just realize that you're getting accountability, that you're just not leaving yourself vulnerable or open, that you realize that, your life is precious, your life is valuable, not just to God, but to the people that, may be in your life and even to yourself, and to see yourself worth it. And at the end of the day, we all are responsible for our journey of healing along with God's help. And so, taking the action to apply different things to your life or find that very thing that's going to help you in your journey, I feel that, when we do that, that's when we begin to grow, and that's where we get our healing. So I wanted to say this last thing to you all. And so I want to thank my guest today, once again, Ida Barnette. Thank you for joining me again here today. I want to let you know that you are seen, that you are very special, that you are enlightening, that you are empowering, and definitely noticeable. And never forget that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the platform. I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I tell you what, we'll see you all next time here on the next episode of Wise Women Build Podcast. You can find the podcast on YouTube at Wise Women Build Podcast. You can even follow me on Facebook under Kina Kraus, and I'll be posting the podcast there in the meantime until we get it out on other platforms. But thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.